Yeah. No problemo. TikTok. Post my video. Uh, where's my controller? That's better. I might come skate today, bro. Because I know skate's gonna be active the sun as well. Man said you have to ask Curry PC, bro. Like, not Curry PC. What is that place called, bro? Yeah, I think it's Curry's PC. Yeah, you have to ask them to fix this shit, and then they do like you give them an email, and then just like they fix that shit like it's nothing, bro. I had the same shit with my laptop, but they fixed that shit the same day I went there. The video's like 20 minutes long. I don't know if it'll even send on Snapchat or should I send it to your number? Like, ooh, what the hell? It does, it does work, bro.
It's kind of talked about in their opening statements. Of course, some people under the tent said they didn't know who Carmelo was, but they looked over, he was sitting next to Eddie. Everything came back to this guy named Eddie. All right. So I was thinking, as I've been sitting there for the past few days, that Eddie was going to be a defense witness because if he's friends with Carmelo, then obviously, he been for his friend, I would say. But one thing I was thinking before he got called was, if he knew Carmelo, why would he stand up and let everybody know, when all the commotion started, hey, this is my friend, he's here with me, blah, blah, blah. Everything's cool. But never heard that from any of the students' testimony. But anyway, Eddie gets on the stand today. They're going through his testimony. He's 5 or 10 minutes in. And then Eddie kind of all but says he knew who Carmelo was. They were cool. But he verbally said, I wouldn't say we were friends. It was just kind of someone that he knew. Okay, cool. Now we move on to the cross-examination by the defense. And this is, I feel, was a little bit of a win for the defense. They showed a whole bunch of pictures of Eddie and Carmelo at these different group settings, at Eddie's house, no less. There was 50th birthday parties for Carmelo's ex-girlfriend's mother. Remember, Eddie and the girlfriend, a girl named Valeria, they were the ones that knew each other, and Carmelo was, I guess, the third party, you would say. So when they had these family functions, Carmelo obviously was there. Okay, they showed some group photos, kind of establishing. And then, here's another defense win to me today. They showed photos of Carmelo and Eddie together. You know, just being teenagers goofing off. One is playing the guitar, making silly faces at the camera. So Eddie gets up there under direct examination saying, yeah, I know him, but, I wouldn't say he's a friend. But then the defense pushes back and he's like, hey, if you're not friends, why do you have all these pictures together? But the crux of Eddie's testimony today, though, Chris, was that he definitely got emotional talking about Austin's death. He said Austin was like a brother to him. He said that on the stand. And when he was describing everything that he saw that day, he came back and saw Austin had a hole in his chest. He immediately choked up and started crying instantly. They had to walk up there and give him Kleenex. And there were some new people in the gallery today, Chris. There were 5 young boys, presumably former teammates, former classmates of Austin Metcalf. And when they were describing that as well, 3 of those 5 boys started crying themselves. And, these are, big football player ex-guys, and they were crying too, just showing the emotional weight that this still carries. And, Carmelo sitting there, he's taking it all in. I'm looking at him on his at his table with his defense as this testimony is going on. Still sitting there stoic. I don't know what's going through his head. I'm sure he's realizing the gravity of what's going down, but his defense, the state rested today. So his defense is up, and they've called 3 witnesses so far, 2 students included, one of those being one of Carmelo's friends, too.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of time spent for both the prosecution and the defense, kind of establishing like why Carmelo Anthony was under this tent. Because from the state's perspective, they've hammered this like tent culture of track and field, where it's like you don't go under the tent of another school. But then with this Eddie character coming into play, like the defense is really trying to show that like Carmelo may have been invited under the tent. That's why he's there. I wonder just how much any of that matters. Because I just think like if you're a juror, it's like when do you enter like the bubble of the information that matters, of like the interaction when we talk about things escalating to the point where Austin Metcalf, maybe it's a hard shove, maybe it's a soft shove, that happens, and then you have Carmelo Anthony responding with this stab wound that eventually takes Austin Metcalf's life. And that kind of leads to a witness, the final witnesses for the state today, the medical examiner who conducted an autopsy on Austin Metcalf. And before we talk about that part of it, I know you've been sitting kind of near the family of Austin Metcalf. And I know there's been body cam video, there's been 911 calls. I mean, it's just the weight of what they're going through. It's just hard to imagine. What did you see prior to that witness?
So, the student witnesses wrap up, and there was this sort of announcement. All the media, as you mentioned, we're all sitting behind Austin Metcalf's family. All 9 members of the media are behind them. So before this medical examiner comes up, there's an announcement that she's going to be the next witness. To which the prosecution turns around. If you don't want to see or hear about any of these things, I advise you to leave the courtroom, because now you're about to get into, the injuries and talking about them. And I was sitting there thinking we were going to see the injuries. We did, and the jury got to see 4 pictures of it, but us in the gallery did not see those things, but they were describing it in detail. So anyway, the prosecution announces, medical examiner's coming in. If you don't want to hear any of this, go out. Austin Metcalf's mom gets up and goes out immediately, along with some other family members and some people in their camp as well. His dad, Jeff Metcalf, initially said no. He nodded his head. I was sitting there behind him. He said he didn't want to leave. And then the prosecutor kind of makes a face and just goes, I advise you to leave. I could hear it was kind of a whisper. It wasn't, an announcement. It was more so direct to him, to which Jeff Metcalf finally got up and left. And, we heard about this 2-inch gaping wound. She described gaping, and she described the difference between gaping and a slit-style stabbing wound, where gaping is more of it's kind of like filleted open, not to be insensitive to it, but that's the way she kind of described it on the stand, and that it was a 2-inch deep wound that hit the cartilage of Austin Metcalf's sternum and actually pierced one of the ventricles in his heart. So he was literally stabbed in the heart, which is likely why the CPR and life-saving efforts weren't working, because no matter how much the heart was pumping out, it was leaking, from the source. So it was really establishing the gravity of the wound, and the jury again got to see 4 pictures. 2 of them were Austin Metcalf on the autopsy table, and 2 of them were the heart removed from the body. That's what the medical examiner was describing they were seeing. So, of course, I'd imagine that a family didn't want to hear that. So, mom, dad, and some other people, I don't know who they were, maybe the aunts and uncles, maybe it's just family, friends, and supporters of the Metcalf family. They all got up and left, about 7 or 8 of them.
And I wonder, too.
So I know you might be wondering, like, why we're still watching this. I'm trying to like have an opinion on this. Based on everything I know and I've heard, they get in this argument, get from under our tent, no, I'm not, do this, get from my tent, yo, chill out, then it turns into, yo, don't touch me. Then the guy, he pushes him with something, with a sword, or I don't know if he punches him, and then the knife comes out. There's thoughts of maybe this kid was getting bullied. There's thoughts of, oh, maybe he was only told to get out of there because maybe it's race. Even though they're claiming it's a culture of like track meets where like, no, this is our tent. Like we don't have the fucking other team sharing our tent. I don't know. It feels like, you know, obviously it's a racial thing, but it's kind of tough, if you ask me, to justify him murdering. It's tough. Unless there's something on that side, right? It's the guy's weapon too. Was shit dumb? I don't know. I'm looking for those details.
Our trust the first responders who were there interacting with Carmelo right after all of this took place. Where it seems like
so. Are y'all aware of the bullying angle that he was getting bullied, and that was his fight back? Well, that's also a defense if you go down that route. But that might also, well, you could probably run that with a self-defense defense. Yeah. I'm wondering, did they do that? Did they go with this bullying angle? Because usually in domestic violence cases, when a woman kills a man, so say a woman ends up stabbing a guy, they usually look for like crime of passion, or they'll look for, oh, okay, she was getting confused by her husband, she snapped. Insanity, something of short to kind of, you know, take the sting off the murder charge. But even then, like, you know, based on some of these circumstances, if maybe there was some blurriness or weakness in the evidence or in the situation period, I'm wondering why manslaughter wasn't the thing, and it was just straight up murder. The jury must have thought they got overwhelming evidence from the prosecutor, or the defense didn't do anything at all to convince them that it's not murder. And that's what they put down in terms of the verdict. The verdict was for murder.
He didn't think that what had happened was going to lead to Austin Metcalf's death. But then you hear about, I mean, the medical examiner, I think, straight up said something along the lines of, like, there's no way that he could have survived this. You know, even if he was on the operating table, like a surgeon might not have been able to save him. The wound was that bad.
It absolutely was that bad. And those are the exact words that she said. And then one word that stood out to me, Chris, that she said, you know, she starts describing the 5 manners of death, and to which she, you know, classified this one as a homicide. And when she explained homicide to the jury, she said the intentional, you know, bringing out of death by another human being. But the key word to that to me was, Chris, and I thought the prosecution would harp on a little bit, was intentional. You know, it wasn't like, that only wasn't this and that. She said the intentional causing of harm that results in death by another human being. So I thought that was a powerful thing. You know, that she said on the stand.
And you just wonder, too, like a statement like that, just that one line. And then I also know from some of these student witnesses who have just very...
Okay, I feel like I need to hear maybe another opposing view. I would love to hear someone who is pro-Carmelo Anthony, because right now we know he's guilty. But I would love to hear someone who's pro-Carmelo Anthony, and why, in their opinion, they would believe. Again, I haven't stepped up to the case that much to be able to 100% lock down an opinion either or. Right now, I am kind of reacting and kind of feeling like I'm on the side of, you know, the nature of the injury, the stabbing. Even if he was bullied, he was going to go to jail for something. You know, I think manslaughter would have been a lucky thing. But if someone is bullying you or they pushed you or whatever, you stab you to death.